Thank you, everyone. It's a thrill to be here. It's my first big event to guest speak, so you'll have to bear with me if I'm maybe just a little nervous. But I'd like to talk a little bit about, for me, my passion, which is the process of design. So not so much maybe the end outcome, because I feel like we see a lot of that in social media, and we see a lot of that in magazines, but I thought it'd be interesting to speak a little bit about what inspires me and the thrill that I get when I work with clients and patrons. Many of you are here tonight, but so again, it's a process of design, and it starts for me with travel. So this is my first picture, first passport. So travel started for me when I was very young. I come from a military family, so we lived overseas, and I guess it was in my blood. So no matter where we lived, and we lived primarily in the UK and then Delaware, Texas always seemed like home to me. So mainly because my grandparents were here. And I developed a love affair with Texas, and I developed a love affair with the American West. And so even though we spent all of our weekends going through all of these stately homes and castles and Anne Hathaway's house or cottage, Shakespeare's cottage, all of these interesting things, I couldn't wait to come back to Texas because I loved going through my grandparents' barn, farmhouse, and some of these buildings that are in where my grandparents are from and where I was born in Grimes County, which is kind of between Houston and College Station. So these are just imprinted in my mind. I used to get scared crawling up the steps because it just seemed so tall to me. But these buildings, and then in the same little town, were these kind of very honest buildings, and they still inspire me to this day. And I just think what a shame that it's not more vibrant, but this kind of concept of this brick walls and a massive building, fewer windows, sheltering from the elements always just stuck with me no matter where we lived. So I came to Texas, I studied architecture, University of Texas at Arlington. I was a terrible student, but an excellent architecture student. So yeah, it was a real gift for me. Architecture is second nature. I don't really think about it as much. My clients will tell you I don't think about it as much as I should, or I don't execute it as much as I should. For me, I see it, I know it, and I rely on a lot of teams of people that can actually produce the work for me. But I wanted to talk a little bit. I'm not an architect in the traditional sense. I'm not a registered architect. I pay deep respect to those architects that I work with. But when I've worked in Mexico and all over Europe, even in India and now in South Africa, I'm called an architect. And it's a sign of respect there. Here, we call everyone designers, which I loathe that term, by the way. I think you could be a decorator, you can be a stylist. I think the word designer has really been shanghaied and abused by a lot of people. And so I think maybe it's the third is just be a personality, right? Like just be, just be a little larger than life, and you can always tell if I haven't done a lot of my work or if I get uncomfortable because I use the word darling a lot. So it's just a little clue. But part of that is a way for us in the creative fields to deflect often. You know, we put a lot of passion in what we do. I know a lot of you here in the design profession, all of my colleagues. And I think we put a lot into this work. And I think we have to have coping mechanisms often to deflect when criticism comes our way. Whether it's good criticism or bad criticism, you still, or one does, or I do, cherish the creative process and what we do for our clients. So that's why I have personality up there. And then my rule is, I'm only as good as you let me be. Anyway, so, and I do believe that. I'm fortunate that the majority of my best clients have always been patrons and collectors, people who are really involved in the creative process. I love it. It's like that TV commercial, an educated consumer is our best client or whatever. I feel that way. I love it when clients challenge me. They bring their A game to the table and push me to be a better designer. So my career started just after college. I was working for a designer who relocated here from New York. And within a year or two, I did my first villa in Florence. So that was like 1996. And at this, 96? At the same time, I was doing a project in Mexico, and we were doing some projects in New York. And what I learned about working and creating in these foreign cultures, first of all, I learned metric equal to empirical. I learned to sketch equally. I learned how to communicate with drawing because I didn't speak the language. So I was 28 years old doing this ridiculously beautiful villa. Our contractor was doing Skiing's villa. It was just some kind of like over the top, not really happening to me moment, but I put everything into it. I put my heart and soul into it. And I learned that if what you do is right, if your intentions are in the right place, somehow it all works out, even when things go wrong. And with the Italians, something always goes wrong. And then I did some commercial projects, a restaurant. I did some big loft spaces in downtown Dallas, Davis Building. Things that people would say to me, why in the hell are you doing those projects? And I'm like, well, they're interesting, right? I learned more about space and commercial work and worked with commercial architects. And so they didn't really pay the bills, but they were just fascinating and interesting, and it led to a lot of other large retail projects. Then I also dabbled in, fine residential projects. And, beautiful work, very proud of it. And then in about 2001, something happened for me that transformed how I looked at design. And I was fortunate to be working in New York, and I went to the Met, and there was an exhibition on the dresses of Jacqueline Kennedy. Now, what transformed this for me was seeing something so fresh and new, and something I hadn't been familiar with. So it's very interesting because in that exhibit, and I have the book, and the book is by my nightstand, and with the exception of a client that I've loaned it to, I refer to it constantly. Do you too? Yeah. It's like a Bible, a beautiful education about quality design and the sartorial quality of what a designer can do. And so I learned about dressmakers' details. It's like architecture. If you don't have a beautiful under construction, you can't have a beautiful exterior. And her dresses were so finely made, in an old school way. So I learned about the construction. I focused on form, and by looking at that fashion, I learned about the concept of form. I loved the severity of her clothes, the elegance that came with it, how simple ornamentation became elegant with that. I also learned how beautiful antiques art or objects could look beautiful with simplicity. And I love the sartorial nature. So in design now, I strive and reach hard to have relationships, especially now with larger projects, that every room somehow connects, that there's some kind of consistency. I'm not a big fan of one room being one thing, one room being the next, everything being an event. I like a consistency. I like a very strong narrative. And the other thing that struck me about that exhibit was it was all about the client. These designers, Ola Cassini, or look at, Halston, did beautiful work, but it was all vehicled through her, right? So other designers for their work, but hers was because of the personality that she put into it. And what that did for me, more than anything else, is learn to design for my clients. Like to step away and let their projects be their own. To take my talents and hold as a mirror that this is how I see you, this is how I see a space for you, this is how I see a space for your restaurant clients. And that's what I learned. None of those designers were diminished by the fact that you think of that as her fashion. So I'm real quickly just going to show you two of the things that I always refer to, and I just put my glasses on. But this gown here, she wore to the first night in Paris, and I'm just going to read to you what it says. a brilliant response to Jacqueline Kennedy's desire to project sophistication without ostentation on her first gala evening in France. This dress and its modest kerchief, elaborate pink and white lace that Diana Vreeland had recommended. But the fabric and the detailing of the dress, the scallop, the edging, and the decoration, they talk a lot about the decoration around the arm, all of that was subverted by the fact that it was a simple material. It was made from straw. So this is an Oleg Cassini. So this is what I think sophistication at its best. Going to the court of Versailles, going to dinner, wearing a lace dress, but having it made of straw. I just thought it was extraordinary. And in person, the colors were absolutely remarkable. So that inspired me. And then, I mean, everyone did, but the next one was another Oleg Cassini. Oh, my glasses are sorry. And I love this description. It's very, very succinct. This was a dress that she wore for the first time as the Trumans came to the White House. She had a history of going simple when the dress of the time was to be more embellished. If you saw the crown, you saw a scene with her, Queen Elizabeth, but she actually really respected Bess Truman. She thought that she was a woman who held together best a family at home. So this, I don't think, was a statement about I'm so different than her, but the quote is, her choice of a relentlessly unembellished gown in the austere Balenciaga tradition cast her as a streamlined vision of modernity, the physical embodiment of the new frontier. So, and you can see it. I mean, it was a young woman, but you see in this dress just pure form, elegant details that somehow, sartorially speaking, she created for a whole administration, a whole generation, what it meant to be young, youthful, and looking forward to the new era. So that changed my life, changed how I looked at design, inspired me to realize that a designer is more than just being an architect. The other person that did it for me was Bill Blass. Now, Bill Blass was interesting because he was the man who taught women how to dress appropriately, as it was said. I'm fascinated by the fact that he was in the military and that he produced these clothing that were like uniforms. So really admired him. My mother wore Bill Blass. And I remember also something else that struck me, that's relative to me today, is as a designer, I'm working on airplanes and other things. That was a dress that he did with all the embellishment. And then just real quickly, the car was a Bill Blass Mark V Lincoln from 1979. And I just think, how incredible is that, right? This man was able to do that as well. So I'm inspired by fashion now. Now I'm all about Zach Posen. If any of you know him, I want to meet him. So just put that out there. I love how he speaks. The other thing is, I saw a collection of Turner paintings in London. And this is my color palette. This is what inspires me over and over and over again. And I know that sounds funny. Everyone thinks of me as a modernist, but I often swing through, well, often in London, but I try to take time because I enjoy seeing his paintings, and there's something about seeing them in the context of the light that's there that's particularly fascinating. So, Bill Turner. I also have a great deal of gratitude to the country of Mexico. My first project ever was in Mexico, and I was adopted design-wise by a Mexican family. This is a project I worked on in Florence, and the interesting thing about this, Reductionism came. I was in Mexico working with this very grand woman who had the most beautiful things you've ever seen. She was downsizing her house, and we went into this big pantry, as big as this room. And she said, okay, today we have to pick only one thing. We're taking only one set, only one collection. We have to decide today. And I thought, oh, who would ever get rid of these beautiful things? But we did. And then she pared everything down. She was the most elegant woman I'd ever met. And later, when I was working with Brenda, who's in the office, right here, I did another home for her in Florence, Hoya, and it was a small limonaya. And the important thing, this was in Piana Gelare, the most beautiful residential neighborhood in Florence. The villa had sold off a limonaya. So to live in that part of Florence and had no one else ever living there before was a challenge. It had never been a home. But it was a small limonaya. So how do we make it beautiful and chic? Brenda made it chic, I just made it beautiful. But these are just before and after. So you can see before, it was just a little garden structure. And then, I can point. And then we did a beautiful outdoor. And what I learned is, I had synthesized working on the Pacific coast of Mexico to Italy, and there was a beautiful synthesis. It was honoring the place of Tuscany, but not recreating a Tuscan environment. So these are just before and afters of this, colonnade. This eventually covered in wisteria. It's supposed to be white wisteria, and some of it grew in purple, and I had it ripped out. Another view down to the pool where we created, sunrise. And then it was a very small space, but we became very modern in our thinking. We said, the Italians don't have a kitchen in the room. We made a kitchen in the room. However, we made it to look like a bar. And we just created every inch or every centimeter of this space as something wonderful. Probably one of my proudest projects. And that was what it was before, just afters. It was featured on Extreme Vacation Homes. We were on TV with it. It was really exciting. But that's where I came up with reductionism. I was sitting there drawing, and I thought to myself, I have these clients, and I preach to them to get rid of things. Like, don't collect more, collect better. For instance, heritage, there's really quality things out there. Just don't buy to buy. Train yourself, educate yourself. Don't just have collections of tchotchkes. So then I started, people say to me all the time, what is reductionism? I'm like, I don't know, it was just a good name I came up with at the time, but it's kind of stuck. But it really, I call it the art of the essential, and there's an essence that you have to have artistry. So what that means to me is that it's about space in architecture, it's not about rooms. There's about to be a context. Are you doing a high-rise? Are you doing a home? I don't think you impose your will as a designer architect on that environment. I think you create it, you stimulate it, but I don't think you can dictate successfully. I think reductionism, to me, it's about innovation. I don't like to do things just because everybody else has done them. I don't get to typically work with clients who want what everybody else has. Most of my clients really do want something more creative. To me, the biggest thing is that texture is color. So I might not use a lot of color in my vocabulary, but to me, when something's heavily textured, it might as well be color, because I see it that strongly. Sense of place, I think creating a place where people are happy and getting the sense that you are in some place unique is important. And a sense of personality. Every client has a personality. And our job as good design professionals is to give them a vehicle where they can express themselves and be their personality. Very interesting, a few years later, I was reading New York Times, and there was a designer called Dieter Rams, and he came up with these 10 principles on good design. I'm not going to bore you with them because really it sounds, almost what I just said to you, but he's something really interesting. He designed a AM radio that was almost the same, looked the same as what the first iPad looked like. So he's a brilliant man. I found out about him after I really got this idea of reductionism, but really, I don't think I can duplicate it. So with honor and respect, I don't even try. Oh. And then that came along, just another quick thing, is I dabbled in the idea of furniture. I created a line called Enjollado Collection, which, to be innovative, was the first person to put minerals in furniture. It didn't last very long because it needed to be capitalized, and I didn't do it. But you can see, I started then also, about this time, acknowledging my sketching. I was always embarrassed by it, and I had a friend say, no, every time you do a sketch, we want you to post it. So I call it sketchiness. So now, a lot of people, I had a woman on a plane say to me, I know who you are, I see your sketches. It was really, really fun. A guy in Italy just did that to me as well. So it's just interesting. That's a sketch I did in my sketchbook on a flight from Dallas to Miami. I called this collection the Flight 484 collection because it was done on that flight. I designed a lot of furniture on airplanes because I'm always behind. And then one of the most exciting things that ever happened to me was I got asked to be the first person to do the livery of an airplane to be painted in diamonds. So a client from Europe, in coordination with AstroNobel, came up with a patented technique, and I have a video of this, a patented technique where they could take gem-grade diamonds and grind them down in an emulsification and turn them into a top coat. So they premiered it on a Rolls-Royce at the Geneva Auto Show. They were involved with all these big names, all the Formula One people, etc. And finally, they were getting all these wild designs. They're like, what the hell? These people, it's an airplane for a person, it's their own place, and they're trying to make it like a race car. So I got a call, and they said, would you do the livery? I'd already done the inside. I was like, oh, okay, of course I would. I don't know a darn thing about it. I had no idea. So it was scary, but I just dialed myself back, and I thought, you have these rules of design, what are they? So I started sketching, and I started thinking to myself, gee, when I get on a private plane, it's the view. When you're there, it's the view of the wing. You're riveted. No matter how many times you get on or off, it's just kind of intoxicating. So I thought to myself, well, if I was gonna do anything in diamonds, I'd probably have at least a stripe, and then I would do the whole main entry door in diamonds. Because I would want to walk through a blaze of diamonds every time I got on my plane. So we did these sketches, did more sketches. I like the idea of the gradiating. And this particular aircraft is a Bombardier Global Express. And the interesting thing about this plane is it's very architectural. So some planes have more organic shapes. This one is clean cut, like line, line, line. So I thought to myself, well, a lot of planes, they have these swoop designs because they're smaller. They're trying to connect the wings and connect this and make it all look a little bigger, a little something. And then they have these planes like shot in the sky, like as they are flying by, they look like the air patterns. I just thought that was kind of cool. I just wanted it to be more like a racing car. So I came up with the idea of the stripe, the belly being one color, and we thought of the gradiating stripe. Originally, we were just going to do the logo, the tail, and the stripe in gold. We wound up doing the whole thing. And so then we produced these detailed drawings. Anyone who knows me knows that I love detail. So there's that, and then that's the final outcome of the plane. So it was that, and it became that. And the nuances, so the gold was placed perfectly with the pitot tubes, which were in the front of the plane. And I articulated the engines because they're so powerful. I articulated the tail. We reversed the stripes on the engines. We painted the gold on the wingtips. Repeated the gold stripe. And this is such an elegant view. And it's interesting, a stripe on a plane looks one level, but it has to curve and has to adapt to the aperture of the plane. Before and after. I actually also have samples of the paint here. And then even this, like how do you place a logo on the wing? And, I had a team of these guys. So like, what is this guy from Texas doing? It was done in Amsterdam. What is this guy from Texas doing here telling us how to paint an airplane? And these big burly guys too, let me tell you. And I'm sitting back there just sweating, right? And there were a couple times, if I'm being honest, I just didn't know. And I took a deep breath and I just thought, what do you think is right? And I stepped forward and I did it. And I say that honestly, sometimes you question yourself. So even this, I became a little bit of a maniac, became OCD, had to place it just right, working on the stripes, doing a whole bunch of things. And then that's the view. That's what I wanted to see. Originally I had the logo up high, and I thought I dropped it down, because I remembered in the Jacqueline Kennedy, when she, on inauguration night, at a decorative element here, it slipped to her waist and that's where it stayed. And so I thought that time, that's where it's gonna go. It's gonna line up with the light, and every time you come on and off that plane, you're gonna know it's yours. And I just want to show you this quick video. Let me show you. Okay, they showed me how to, there we go. And so this is just a quick video that shows gem grade diamonds. So it's a clear coat that goes on top of aircraft. It's really developed for yachts. And you really get a sense of how it's working. And then you can just see, even though from afar you don't see it, I had subtle details of red to white, and this was on the Rolls Royce that Prince Albert launched. The exciting thing about this is we're hoping soon it's going to be on furniture. So, just take that back. So real quickly, more of the process real quick. And then that was me and my team that got to do it. Really, I was never told how much it cost. I also knew not to ask. And then that's me. I got to go on the first flight. It was from Amsterdam to Frankfurt. And so then this is just what, quick sum up, what I think luxury is. Granted, I painted a plane in diamonds, and that's pretty outrageous, but I do think luxury is something as simple as, it's as simple as being convenience. That's what makes me an American designer working, is I believe that clients should have convenience. I believe in the quality of handmade and supporting local artisans. I believe that luxury is bespoke. It's having the ability to work with someone who has the right trades to get you something that's yours. I think it should be the unusual. I think it should reflect the individual. I believe strongly in using very humble materials, but using them in an expensive way. I'm offended often by people who use outrageously expensive materials and it looks cheap. I don't think luxury has to be ornamental. I don't think luxury is reproductions. And I don't think that luxury is excessive or wasteful. And then I'm just going to show you, just as an example, some of the stuff that we do. I just wanted to show these as a concept because, I think if you work with a design professional, they should be able to communicate in real time what they're thinking. And I think there's something about these hits a lot of points. This is 2 bathrooms that I've designed next to each other here in Dallas, and they're highly unusual. We couldn't call the one on the right bathroom in a box. So we got rid of having a separate bathroom and a separate closet, and I put the bathroom inside the middle of the room, and the whole outside of the room is a closet. And so what we did with that was, for me, it's not an unusual thought, because I work in Europe, and I work in places where we have old structures. And you would take old rooms and convert them into new functions. So for me, this was a perfect example of how to give a client something completely functional, completely rational, but outrageously functional. The bathroom that's inside the closet is obviously her closet. When you go to the other one, it was just the idea that the whole closet has little bathrooms off of it. So it was kind of like the yin and the yang, but again, it's the same sense that they both have. It could have been an old villa, an old home, where we reused and reclaimed the space. And then last is just what I believe is that design, doesn't have to be a lot of mystery to it, a lot of thought sometimes. This is a private island I'm working on off the coast of Mauritius. And it was so simple. This is what won me the project. I said, look, you have this historic structure. This is what it should be like. It should just be using the same materials. We don't have to make a big impression. Not everything has to be a big statement. And so that explains why I've been making all these trips to Mauritius. But anyway, there we go. That's it. That's all I got.